All right, folks, we are live. It is April 16th, 2013, 8 p.m. or 8:05 p.m. And this is your host, Dana Antiochus, with my new show on Renegade Broadcasting. I think I'm going to go with Imperium Europa. I think that title pretty much says it all right there. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, and I'll explain more about that later. But without any further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest today. We have the pleasure of having Harold Rome, Dr. Harold Rome of nationalist.org, and let me pull him up right now. Harold, are you there?
I am here, my friend, yes.
All right, brother. Excellent. I'm actually going to bring up your site, so I have it right here at my disposal. Gnostic Liberation Front.
Sounds like a good idea. Yes.
Is it .com or .org?
.com.
.com. All right. All right. .com is not coming up. Now let me just introduce Harold. Harold, why don't you just do that yourself? I mean, I know you have. He's written for the Barnes Review. He has a number of articles regarding Christianity, history, theology, politics, and you can see all of it on GnosticLiberationFront.com. Okay, it's coming up. I love the title here. You have neither left nor right, but populist for social justice. And when it says social justice, that's a throwback to the old Huey P. Long you've got a picture of, and Father Coughlin. So those were two men who were I guess you could say nationalists in American history that railed against the powers that be and the powers that still dominate over our society. So Harold, how would you introduce yourself? You can say whatever you want.
Well, I live down on the Texas Gulf Coast, and for some years I've researched and written about current events, overlooked and ignored history, certain true crime stories, and also the occult, so-called occult, world religions, and general metaphysics. My articles appear not only on Gnostic Liberation Front, but some other sites as well. I'm also a contributing editor and board member for the Barnes Review Historical Magazine, which is a great magazine if you've never seen it. Go to barnesreview.org, take a look. I am a columnist for the Jeff Rense program. I also write for the Nationalist Times newspaper and New Dawn magazine out of Melbourne, Australia, and I have articles both in English and Spanish on Tsunami Politico, an online magazine out of Buenos Aires. So I do a number of things. What I really like to talk about, and really recently published an article about called Rome Created Christianity, which is about what the Roman Empire did when they essentially took over the emerging Christian church.
Yeah, that was a really interesting article. I mean, I always suspected that that Rome really kind of adapted or adopted the religion and adapted it to its own uses and its own design, and that's kind of what I got out of that article. And it's pretty obvious with the Roman Catholic Church, it's not too hard to see. But that Rome created Christianity. You got that right there on the front, and it was a pretty long article, but it goes into the background of the development of Christianity, which I think a lot of people really miss, a lot of Christians. I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about basically today is Christianity, one of my favorite subjects, the baby Jesus. and also Judaism, how it relates, how it evolved out of it, and quite frankly, whether or not it is truly antagonistic or an antithetical, or is it an enabler of Jewish supremacy and control. So I guess I'll just introduce it with that. And Harold, rather, you can take it away.
Well, on several radio programs, I have said something that I'll use the term pissed off a lot of people, and I'll go ahead and say it. The Bible is a Jewish document. It was written by Jews, for Jews, and for those whom the Jews wish to deceive. So while I am a seminary graduate and former Christian minister, I've dropped all that behind. Once you study, you see that the Christian religion, first of all, the Romans basically took it over about 325 A.D., so you've got over 300 years before that, and we don't really know all that much about what was going on back then, but we can assume that the Gnostics, the Essenes, and other rather mystical cults and sects were involved in it. And when I was in seminary, we were taught that so-called St. Paul wrote his documents around the 40s and 50s in the first century, and that the Gospels came along in the 60s and 70s. But there is really no evidence of that at all. As one thing I've said in several articles is that if an early church, either in East or the West, had even a little sliver of an original gospel manuscript, they would have had it in a reliquary on the altar and worshipped like the remains of a saint. There is no record that ever happened. And the oldest manuscripts, autographs of the New Testament, are from the 500s and 600s, and when the Roman Church wrote their Latin Vulgate Bible, Jerome, in Greek his name is Hieronymus, once he finished his translation about 398 A.D. and published it, apparently whatever documents he used were either sequestered and stored away and hidden, or were destroyed, and he relied very heavily on the Greek Septuagint, which was the Jews were forced by the Romans to translate their Old Testament into Greek. They didn't really want to do that, but they did, and that's what we have. And most Christians will say, oh, well, we don't follow that Bible. We follow the King James Bible. But when you look at the King James Bible and what that really is, the King James translators, basically they relied very heavily on the Jews when there was any kind of Old Testament variation, and they were in doubt of what words, phrases to use. They always relied on what the Jewish rabbis told them. And then when you get into the New Testament, I believe that the basic New Testament was created by the Romans, that they essentially took whatever, if any, early Gospels actually existed, that they took them and rewrote them exactly like they wanted them. And I have a great article that appeared in Barnes Review also about so-called St. Paul, the so-called Apostle Paul, whom I maintain was essentially a Roman intel agent who basically took over the evolving Christian movement, which was very Judaically related in the beginning, and he took it basically out of Palestine, brought it into Europe and the Mideast, out of the Mideast, and created what became the Roman Catholic Church. Most Christian churches will, and we may have a caller come in here and totally disagree with me.
We'll take...
our church.
We'll take calls later on. I want to let you roll for a little bit before
okay.
we do.
Many Christians will tell you our church has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church. We've separated from all of that. But when you look at where their scriptures came from and where their worship practices came from, it all comes from the Romans. So,
well, see, my view was always that Paul was a Jewish agent. The traditional viewpoint was that, one of the major ways to interpret Christianity in a negative light is that it was a Jewish conspiracy to infiltrate the Roman Empire and destroy their aristocratic values and noble. This is like the Nietzschean perspective, where you look at Paul as kind of a. Because Paul, let's be honest, Paul is really the guy who's responsible for the spread of Christianity into the European world. He's the one that tried to convert the Greeks. And, what Jesus really, his message, he was speaking to his fellow Jews. And he even says it in the New Testament. There's more than one line where he says, I have not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I'm not here for the Gentiles. He says it more than on one occasion. So that's how I always looked at it as, if anything, it's like a it's like a Jewish heresy. It's an outgrowth of Judaism, because Jesus was a rabbi, wasn't he? I don't know. Where would you, how would you approach that from that angle? Because the Romans definitely took it and used it once it started to spread, and it gained a lot of momentum. I'm not trying to discredit your theory, because it's obvious that that line where St. Paul, what does he say? He says, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." Is that Paul or Jesus? I forget. But basically, they're saying pay your taxes and don't mess with Rome, and the spiritual matters will be for God. But you still have to bow to the king or whatever. Okay, let me see. Harold just dropped. Let me, I hope he calls back. Let me give him a call just to, Harold, call back in. You just dropped out. So essentially, we're trying to peg down here what Christianity actually is. And when I say that, we're talking about mainstream Christianity. Not with all its separate denominations, and you have Catholicism, you have Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, and Protestant breaking off of Catholics. It's hard to tell, when you say Christianity, you have to kind of define your terms. Hey, Harold, yeah, you're back. Okay, good. You dropped off there a little bit.
Yeah, we lost the call there. Sorry about that.
No problem, brother. I go ahead.
Well, I was talking about, heard me not, but whether the character that we call Jesus really existed or not, or if he did, was he a composite of other characters, or what? If the things that were written about in the New Testament actually happened, various pagan authors would have gleefully written about it and told the story in other countries all around the world, other than a few later Roman authors like Tertullian and Flavius Josephus, a Judeo-Roman, and there no one wrote a word about it. So the early church evolved as a mystical group, and whether a prophet called Jesus, or maybe more than one of them, was actually around or not, we don't really have any evidence of that. And this, again, angers a lot of Christians today when I say something like this. But there are numerous books that talk about this and have for a long time. There is a wonderful lady writes or uses the pseudonym Achoria S. She's written about the Christ conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold, which in a way it is. And when you look at the church today, it is one of the biggest money-making operations in the whole world.
Sure. I mean, I don't really look at Christianity as being a nefarious thing like Judaism. My problem with it is its control over the minds of our people, and the fact that it ultimately what it leads to is a subservient position to Jews. I mean, that's how I look at it. I see Christianity not as something that was subverted, but that it is the subversion. It really, when you talk about cultural Marxism, Jesus, you could say, yeah, he was a nice guy. He was kind of a hippie-esque figure. He preached peace and love, and, he was a socialist revolutionary. I mean, he's painted in a lot of different ways. I mean, essentially the way and then you have the Pope just recently saying the Jews are our older brothers, so there you go. I mean, you got to get out of the Jewish box. That's the problem. You always end up in this Jewish box. And, even if you think you got something that's antithetical to it, Christianity, ultimately, it ends up sending you back around in the same circle where you started, and it's, I see it as for the point of conversation, let's just assume Jesus was a real guy. Let's assume he was an actual historical figure, even though, as you say, the documentation for this is very scanty. I mean, it's kind of hard to prove your case, especially when they're all writing years after these supposed events occurred. Right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
So yeah,
I like what you say about Christianity putting you in a Jewish box. It really does. And when you go around and talk to modern Christians, they're basically going to tell you, oh, we love the Jews. And we have to love the Jews because the Bible tells us they are the chosen people. God chose them, which is total bunch of BS if you ask me. And I think you feel the same way.
Absolutely. And, in the nationalist movement, this is a huge divisive debate. I'm not trying to cause any kind of frigging internal war here. Basically, I just want people to understand, where their beliefs are coming from. And in my experience, if you don't grow out of this type of thing yourself, I was a teenager, and I could kind of see past it. As I remember when I had to make my confirmation, and first of all, you have two books. You have the Old Testament and the New. You have the Torah and then the New Testament. And the character of these gods are completely, it's so bipolar. The idea that Yahweh is the same God of Jesus. Apparently, he had a huge personality shift or change because he goes from being just a completely outrageously cruel and manipulative, vindictive character in the Old Testament, genocidal, completely. What God? Just read the Old Testament. Just read Deuteronomy and Joshua and all these characters that these Christians, Zionists, worship so much, which probably in truth never even existed. It's even Israeli historians today will tell you that the archaeological evidence of these mythical figures like Saul and David and Solomon and these guys, it's Jewish mythology. It's all just Jewish mythology. And the New Testament, I used to say, we can at least say, why don't we say this? The New Testament is all right because the Jews lose their status as being God's chosen people because they're in disobedience with God because they never accepted Christ. That's the traditional, I think they called that supersessionism or replacement theology, but you still have to admit that, okay, the Jews had this special deal with God in the beginning, and then because they rejected one of their own Messiah, now they're out of bounds, and again, you're still in the box. I mean, any way you look at it, it's just hard to it's hard to admit it. And then when you look at all these other influences like Gnostic, pagan, Neoplatonic, and Stoic influences on Christianity, those are the things that I actually liked about it, is the fact that you had these other elements. But in your essay on Rome, you kind of show how the church was constructed, how Constantine really, just kind of utilized it as a political ploy, ultimately what would you say, to unite the empire, or to, was it because paganism was in decline? What was the reason for this sudden shift?
The old Roman religion with the basic gods and all that had fallen into basic disarray. Most people didn't believe it anymore, and it didn't really unite the empire. And the Romans realized their empire was declining, essentially falling apart, and they wanted to create something that would unite all the Romans together. So they basically came up with Christianity. As I point out in the article, there is another religion, Mithraism, which was active at the same time in the early years of the first century. It was a very popular religion among the Roman army and civil servants. Mithra was a similar savior character. They even had a baptismal type of ceremony and a bread and wine sacrificial ritual meal, all of this. But for some reason, Constantine basically decided to choose to take over the Christian religion and bring something brand new in, and which is what they did, and they essentially reordained the Roman pagan priests as Roman Catholic priests. They changed the old pagan temples. They changed them into Christian churches, gave them Christian names, and the household spirits among the old Roman religion, the Lares and Penantes, they simply made them the saints. So they adapted it all and made the religion something that they hoped would unite the Roman Empire.
Right, and you have festivals like, the calendar of Easter is Ostara, and the Celtic Samhain was, where Halloween falls, I think, or
right.
and then you have, of course, just even the birth of Jesus itself is kind of intriguing. How they put it at of course they picked the summer or the winter solstice rather, and you have all these connections with light. Jesus is the son of he is the light of the world, and he was born on the winter solstice, so it's pretty clear, the solar aspect of it all. And I think Julius Evola writes about this a lot in his books, and some traditionalists will delve into that type of thing. But ultimately, what would you say to the idea that Christianity was foisted upon the Romans? Do you think it's kind of conspiratorial, or do you think it was just a natural kind of evolution, just through, because wherever the Jews go, they end up bringing all these ideas with them and new faiths and things, and you had all these competing, like you say, Mithraism which has, I guess, a throwback to, is kind of like, is it like Zoroastrianism?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, the fire worshippers, the Persian religion. So, Jesus, the figure of Jesus the Christ as a savior figure, in these books that you mentioned, like the Christ Conspiracy, they basically show that there were a number of different, messiahs or savior figures for different people, and there's no way to know how all this ended up centering around Jesus, but somehow, he becomes the Son of God, and I look at Christianity from an analytical perspective, just approaching it from an evolutionary standpoint. Is good religion for our people? Is this something that makes us strong? And this is where it gets complicated, because you have a lot of people that look to the past and they look at the medieval period, and they forget that when you Christianity, you have to remember that there were really three phases of it. You have the original Judaic heresy, an outgrowth of Judaism, where it started. And then you have the Romans taking it, which is, fully illustrated in your article on how Rome created Christianity. And then you have the Roman and Byzantine period, and the Crusader epic, and the medieval period, and then the Protestant Reformation, and it's all just a continuous stream, one thing branching off the next. Of course, CI is something we'll get into later. I don't want to even make things more complicated now. We'll just focus on traditional Christianity for now. But I mean, if you look into it, why? I mean, would you say that this is something that has strengthened our race or weakened our race? I mean, what would you say?
You could go either way on that. A lot of people are going to say, oh, that is the greatest thing about Western civilization, is that it was Christian civilization. But before it was Christian, it was many other things. And you have the ancient Nordic religions. And if you go all the way back to India with the Aryan people, you have the Vedic religions and all of that, which were much, much earlier. And I'll go ahead and mention a book here that written in 19th century by an Englishman called Percy Graves, Graves was his name, and he wrote 16 Crucified Saviors, where he talks about various world religions and all the different savior figures that evolved there. And if you Google that title on the internet, you'll probably find a free download of it and all of that. This might be a good time to say that if you want to email me, I welcome that. Let me say my email, then I'll spell it for you. It is Eagle Revisionist, that's EagleRevisionist, Eagle Revisionist at AOL.com. Email me. If you disagree with me, that's fine. If you agree with me, that's great, and I have different e-books and things that I can share with you. But what we get back at is that, and you never hear a Christian pastor really talk about this, that the two greatest festivals of the Christian year, Christmas and Easter, are both basically based on pagan ceremonies. Santa Claus was a Nordic pagan figure, and as you've already pointed out, Easter, the word itself comes from Ostara. Ostara was a fertility god. That's what the little Easter bunnies and little Easter chickens and Easter eggs and all of that. It was a fertility festival, and most Christians don't really understand that. And I'd say you really never, ever have a Christian pastor talk much about that at all. They say, oh, it's just something that helps the children learn about religion. But Christianity has brought many good things. However, when you look at it, it's basically a pro-Jewish religion, and it creates a situation where Christian believers have to believe that the Jews are the quote-unquote chosen people. This is the same. That's true of all three Abrahamic religions. It's true of Judaism. It's true of Christianity. It's true of Islam. That all three of them are based on the so-called Old Testament, which was created by the Jews. The Masoretic rabbis worked on it for 800 or 900 years, got it exactly like they wanted, and that's what we have in the Bible today. And you might ask, which some Christians do, why do we even have the Old Testament in there?
Right.
Again, when you read about what the character called Jesus had to say, he never ever used the Hebrew word Yahweh, Yahovah, however you want to place your Hebrew vowels in there. He never used that word. He talked about his Father God.
Yeah, so, God the Father, right.
God the Father, exactly.
That's what I tell, see, and this is why, it's almost like, the problem started when, this is so important about how the Romans, when they first took the religion, well, I guess you could really put the blame on Luther, because Luther is the one that translated the Old Testament, because, the Catholic Church, I don't think really, the people, they didn't even, you had Latin was the language, and the priests were the only ones that really knew how to speak it once they went into the vernacular languages. And I mean, Luther, when he was translating the Old Testament, he was dismayed at, I guess the treachery of the stories about these people, their own stories. All you have to do is read it, and it's all over the place. I guess I should just say in Islam, in all fairness to them, I think their version of the Old Testament is not the same as the Christian, which is basically the same as the Torah. I think the Islamic people have a different version of events. Now, I don't know how different they are, but apparently in their version, the Jews aren't these just completely genocidal creatures. But I don't even know. I don't know. I haven't read the Quran personally, so I can't say for sure. But Abraham, it's an Abrahamic religion, and like you say, it all goes back to this seed theory, this idea that this guy started this special group of people, this tribe, and Abraham, of course, they place him at Ur, which would have been a Sumerian city at the time, Ur of the Chaldees. And to me, it's just an invented character. They put him in Ur because Ur is the center of a high civilization at that time. So they're basically just pumping themselves up, which is what they always do. And you've tried to follow their history, and they wandered over here, and then they're in Egypt, and they're slaves, and of course there's no evidence for that either. To me, it's an invented past, the entire thing. I mean, it's at some point, even the Old Testament itself, I was completely shocked to find out that the oldest version of the Old Testament, the Torah, is really not that old. I mean, it's only maybe a couple centuries before Christ, or the Common Era, and it's not even written in Hebrew. It's written in Greek. Isn't that kind of pathetic and funny that the oldest version of this Jewish Torah is not even written in Hebrew? I mean, it's the Septuagint is in Greek, so I found that to be interesting. And of course, all these things that supposedly happened thousands of years ago are written about at a much, much later date. So and what kills me is how American Christians are just so enamored with the Old Testament. They name their daughters and their sons all these Judaic names. So, and in the Third Reich, I think they were actually discouraging that. They didn't want their kids to be named after these biblical Old Testament figures. But yeah, however you want to take it from there. I mean, we're kind of jumping around, but we're attacking the same target.
Well, this is a topic that it gives itself over to leaping around a bit, for sure. And earlier you mentioned Martin Luther, and one thing you learn about his highly vaunted translation of the Bible, if you study Hebrew, you realize that in the book of Genesis, the Hebrew letters Yod, He, Vav, He, which, depending on where you put your vowels, or Yahweh or Jehovah and all of that, that other gods are named there too, Elohim,
right,
which is a plural, and there I can't think of some of the others, but they're all named, and Luther essentially translated all of that, any of the names of God. He didn't literally translate them at all. He called them Gott der Herr, God the Lord. He translated them all as God the Lord.
Right.
So he avoided that there might be other gods. But when you study Hebrew and you look at even in good translation, English translation of Genesis, you see this if you want to. If you read closely enough, you'll see it.
You mentioned Jehovah and what was the other one? Elohim. Yeah, and then you have Yahweh. Yahweh, I think, is their big one, and then Adonai was another one.
Yes. Thank you. That's a good point.
I try to just look at the entire. I try to be objective about it and look at the entire history, and I look at how the state of Christianity today. Now, we all know that we have Christian Zionism, and it's a big problem because it's it really centers around the debate of what Christianity is, because yes, we know about the Schofield reference Bible and the and Darby and dispensationalist premillennialism, which is just this theory that the Jews have to be over there, so we have to support them regardless because this is part of God's plan. And you're going to be you're disobeying God to go against Him. Even though these same Christian Zionists ultimately know that in their own belief system, 2/3 of the Jews or something like that are going to be wiped out at the time of tribulation. They're friendly with them, but they're not really friends. I mean, and the Jews know this, but they're happy to take the support and the money from these, gullible Christians and that you find in Middle America and the South and anywhere these evangelicals are.
Well, yes, they're all over the country, but yes, in South and Southwest you find lots of them. And when I go to visit my friends in Texas Hill Country, I drive through San Antonio, and the route I take takes me right by Hagee's Church.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, yes, the main Christian Zionist. And the Christian church of that nature spends a lot of, helps support Israel totally. And they're just sold out to the Judaic version of the Bible.
And this is... it's funny because the same characters, the same shadowy, like Jacob Schiff, who funded communism or Bolshevism, I should say, rather. They funded these projects, which again, this is not too old of a phenomenon. This is really another weird tangent of Christianity that comes out of Protestantism and. It's really kind of an American thing. They don't have it over there in Europe, thankfully. But if you are a nationalist and you're anti-Jewish, you're faced with a problem here, because you kind of have to become heretical and argue that, well, my version of Christianity is just the New Testament strictly. We're not Old Testament Christians. And I have to agree with Charles Giuliani that any way you cut it, you really can't separate the old and the new, because Jesus, they have all these prophecies of how, in the old, supposedly confirming Jesus coming, and he refers, he says that he's not here to change the law or so it's kind of contradictory in that aspect. And if you're a anti-Semitic or I guess I would say anti-Jewish, and you are a Christian, you have to become an apologist for this fact that that Christianity never managed to cleanse itself of its Jewish roots. And there's only really three ways out of that, and I got them right here. I wrote them down, and I would see if you agree. Now, Houston Chamberlain, the first way is to say, if you're a racialist now speaking and anti-Jewish, the first way out is to say, well, Jesus is, whether he's a Jew or not, it doesn't matter because he wasn't human. He's God. That's the first argument. Which is heresy, because that's not what Christianity says. It says that he was both human and divine. Now, the second way out is to declare him an Arian and just say, well, he's not a Jew. And, that's kind of what you find in foundations of the 19th century, Houston Stuart Chamberlain and people like this. They argued that, well, Jesus couldn't have been a Jew because he's a nice guy, and, he's from Galilee, and they never got along with the other Jews, and I've heard that. And then you have the third way out is CI, or Christian Identity, where they go the opposite way. Instead of removing the Old Testament, they embrace it and they just transfer the identity of the Israelites, and they say, well, they're not Israelites, they're Aryans. It's a total inversion and flipping of reality on its head. And we'll talk more about that later, but you can take that where you will.
Well, yes, the Christian identity movement, I regard it as a false religion. Having said that, I have great respect for the people who practice it, because most of them, if not 90% or all of them, are white nationalists, whom I have great respect for. But basically, Christian identity is a false religion. There has never been a major historian of any kind that has ever proposed that belief, and you just can't find it in outside of the narrow Christian identity text that you have. I like that you mentioned Charles Giuliani earlier. I appeared for 2 hours on his program, and we discussed some similar things to what you and I are discussing now, and had a bunch of pissed off callers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course they can't handle it, and I mean, really, if you look at the state of Christianity today, let's just take South Africa. I mean, Christianity was probably a huge influence in getting the whites there to basically turn their country over to the blacks. That comes from this Sermon on the Mount inverse of evolutionary ethics. It's basically, you can't. It teaches you to be humble and meek and not to be a warrior or anything like that. And going down the list, I mean, I don't like the way it puts man above nature. I think man is a part of nature, not above it. That's what National Socialist preaches right out of the Mein Kampf. So that's a fundamental contradiction with Christianity. You had the pro-black abolitionists in the North. You have all the wars it caused between Europeans, white-on-white violence. I mean, the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the Byzantines and the Latins. Like Frankish Crusaders sacked their Greek Christian brothers, and I think that was the Second Crusade or the Fourth. I forget which one. But the slave morality, which Nietzsche talked about, because you have the Hebrews are enslaved by the Egyptians. It's no wonder the blacks in America during slavery loved it, and they adopted it. And you have the name of the black churches are the Ami Zion Church. You have, and then you have, of course, and the anti-eugenic nature of it, the conflict with science, Copernicus, Galileo, Bruno, this kind of thing, the way it creates apathy to the here and now. And finally, my last 2 points are the sheepish nature, that, the way it just, you got the people with heads in their clouds. And the last thing is the paradigm, the two paradigms we get, which is the liberal universalist Christianity of cultural Marxism, which accepts gays and mixing and immigration, sanctuary cities, all of this stuff. And then on the right, you got the Christian Zionists. So, I mean, it's other than some small, narrow groups, I don't see how this benefits our race anymore. I mean, and the last point is that all the new Christians, just to let the whites out there to know, are not Europeans. I mean, you have the Chinese, the Africans, the Hispanic world. I mean, this is going to be the new Christianity, and they picked the Pope for a reason in South America, whether he's white or not. It's still, it's for the Hispanic element. So, but yeah, that you can go from there. I mean, that's my full attack right there on Christianity in general.
Basically, the Christian church is dead in Europe, except for the Catholics in the South. In the North, it still exists, and the government supports the churches. There's still state churches, but most people, after the horrible things that happened in World War I, World War II, realize that if the so-called Jehovah God is such a good God, why did he let all that happen? And once you ask these questions, you come up with a lot of doubt. Therefore, most Central and Northern Europeans don't really believe in the Christian church anymore.
Yeah, and you have the influence of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, which is good and bad, because it's good because it frees our minds from Christian superstition, but on the other hand, it kind of led to liberalism, and tolerance and all this kind of thing. So you're still getting tolerance, whether it's a Christian tolerance found in the New Testament, or universalism, or whether it's this post-Enlightenment tolerance. Racially it's destructive, any way you look at it. So, I mean, this is why our race is in such a bad situation right now. But, it's if you go even deeper, what would you say to the fact that you have these characters like Jews for Jesus, for example, and the way I look at that is, of course, look, Yeshua or Jesus, he was one of the boys. Basically these Jews are saying, look, we made a mistake, and you are the Messiah, and the end goal of Christianity, I see, is Jewish supremacy. I mean, I've read Revelation, and the Antichrist forces are led by the Gentiles, not the Jews. The Jews, yes, they're going to perish in the tribulation, but at the end of the day, Jesus, this Messiah figure, is going to, the Jews are supposed to embrace him, and then those Israelites are supposed to be, on the kingdom of the earth, the earth. I mean, that's my reading of Revelation. Maybe it's wrong. I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
So you could say, in a sense, that Christianity and Judaism are really just competing forms of Jewish supremacy. Judaism is their main thing, but they know that they have this other religion that upholds them as God's chosen. So. And what could be more supreme than God himself in the flesh? When you take a Jew as your God, Granted, he was a loving, meek, and gentle God. I mean, compared to Yahweh. To me, it's just Yahweh is cleaning up his image or what. I mean, it's just I can't. I don't know. The whole thing just makes me it gives me distaste. But
well,
are you?
It's very distasteful, yes. And like I say, when you talk to modern day Christians, you find that they are all going to tell you that, we must love and honor the Jews. The Bible tells us they are the chosen people, which is so much BS that I don't know how else to say it. And Christian identity tries to do away with that, but whether they're really very successful at that or not remains to be seen.
And is it really? I mean, John Friend, he did an interview with Kyle right here on this network, but I think at that time Kyle was on. He was doing Star Theory Radio. You guys can look that up. But I mean, when John said he said that Christianity was meant to be a nationalistic thing, I think that's a complete misinterpretation. I mean, it is universalistic. You have and Paul really sealed the deal when he said, look, there is neither Jew nor Greek nor this nor that. You're all the same under God, all equal. And whether that equality translates to just that God loves us all the same or not, it's universalism any way you cut it.
You're absolutely right. Yes, I agree with you completely on that. Yes.
And Christian identity is just Judaism. I mean, it's just taking Judaism for white people. Basically, that's what I see it as.
That's essentially all that it is. Again, we're probably offending people, but I don't really care. It's a false religion, and if you want to be a white nationalist, find another religion or create another, or use National Socialism as a religion. And I was looking here in my notes. I have what Savitri Devi said, just a very brief quote. National Socialism is infinitely more than a mere political creed. It is a way of life, a faith in the fullest sense of the word. One could say a religion, however different it may at first appear from every existing system, so-called in current speech. But we must realize religions are not as easy to uproot as mere political creeds. So I hope National Socialism will come back and rise again. I believe that it is. And it has a religious quality to it if you want it to.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my understanding of it. And that's why it was so popular, because it literally, it saved the German people, and it was on the path towards a new order. I mean, what we got today is the result of its defeat, and that's thanks to the American, the Judeo-led forces of the United States and Britain, and the Jewish communist Soviet Union. It's just too bad that it worked out that way. I mean, that's history. It's in the past, but I don't see any other way but white nationalism saving, rising. Because I mean, if it doesn't happen, we're going to be lost as a race.
Right. Yeah.
And
we look back at it. What happened in World War II was that England and America did the work of the Jews in trying to totally destroy the German people, and certainly to destroy National Socialism completely, and we ended up turning huge portions of Europe over to the damned communists who ruled, oppressed people, and killed them for over 70 years before they finally got free from all of that. That is what we did.
Yep, and I And this is another thing why being an American nationalist, I mean, just the idea of American nationalism to me is kind of a non-starter, because the concept of America, what it has become as a meta-nation, is a cancer to our race, and it's America really needs to be dismantled. I mean, I know what they want. They basically want to go back to the 1950s, the 1920s, the good old days. But my attitude is that really even that was an illusion, because you had these other guys working behind the scenes the entire time, and they were on the move from the very beginning. And then you can argue about Freemasonry, and because all these esoteric topics, if you want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, the Founding Fathers, I mean, I don't have just a strictly negative version. I mean, I know Freemasonry was, you could say, what would you call it, an anti-Christian?
It's anti-Christian, and basically I wrote some articles about that. I have a book, The Occult War, which is essentially about Freemasonry. Basically, it is a form of Kabbalistic Judaism for the Goyim. Right. And it basically is, and when you look at what it does, it's based on the whole thing about Freemasonry. I won't go into this long period of time, but the whole thing about Freemasonry is based on the building of the Old Testament temple, which is, of course, totally Jewish, so it's totally pro-Jewish in its outlook on life, and you can't be a Mason and be any kind of anti-Semite. Believe me, you cannot.
Absolutely, and it establishes the foundation of the New World Order. I mean, that's really, it's just it's another arm of the Judaic, vision of a future utopia with Jews running the world. I mean, that's really kind of what I see it performing as, I mean, there were different. Now, I'm interested in, like, Rosicrucianism and, all these other kind of aspects of esoteric history. People like Leonardo da Vinci and all these guys were into Hermetic principles and this kind of thing. And this is where it gets confusing, because you got the Kabbalah thrown in there, too. And, it's just it's hard to sift through, but there seems to be a consensus that there are hidden truths or occult truths that are buried, esoteric principles of knowledge that were known at one time and may have been all part of some there's some faith that existed in the ancient past. I don't know if you believe in Atlantis or not or what, but this is this all gets kind of out there, but I'm into studying these different philosophical traditions.
Yes, it is. It's very interesting. There are occult secrets within Freemasonry that are suppressed, but basically what we have as Freemasonry today, again, we may disappoint some people by saying this, it's basically a pro-Jewish operation, and by the fact that they're supposedly based on the building of the Old Testament temple, it has pro-Judaism written into every aspect of it.
In studying the occult origins of National Socialism, you come across things like the Thule Society, they had that magazine, I think it was called, I don't know, was it Ostara or I forget.
One of them was called Ostara, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was Ostara, yeah, and you had figures like von Liszt and Liebenfalls and Sabendorf and all these guys that were occult kind of pagan oriented people, and they all basically called out Freemasonry as being a Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. And they had
exactly what it is, yes.
And then you get guys like Incogman, who I love his website, but this is another pet peeve of mine. And I don't know how much you researched this Khazar thing. That's another thing the Christians love to do. They love to say that, well, the Jews today are not the Jews of the Old Testament. They're the Khazars. And I've studied this, and I don't think that's true. I mean, I don't think there is a Khazar origin of Ashkenazi Jewry. Maybe there's a Khazar element of Eastern European Jews, like the Russian Jews and these kind of things. But even in that case, if you look at Russian Jews, they all have German last names. Why would they have German names if they didn't come from the West? So
well, in my book that Barnes Review published, From the Temple to the Talmud, I have a chapter about the Khazars and how that when they came into Europe, they essentially came to Germany and infiltrated the Jews that were already there. There were Sephardic Asian Jews that were already in Europe. The Khazars joined up with them and basically took all of that over and essentially tried to take over Germany. And that's what Adolf Hitler had to deal with when he came into power, was how to remove this situation, to change it. And I have about the esoteric aspects of National Socialism. I have completed a book-length manuscript already. I don't have any publisher yet. If people are interested, email me, call me, whatever, and I'll tell you more about it. But yes, there was a heavy occult, esoteric, metaphysical influence in early National Socialism. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but that is the truth about it.
Right, because they want to paint National Socialism as a Christian philosophy, which is, to me, the farthest thing from the truth. And the thing with the Khazars that bothers me is that, again, it's another way for them to say, well, these aren't the real Jews of the Old Testament. So we can go on worshiping these Israelites of the Bible, because they're the good guys, and the people you see today that are running the show are the Khazars. They're not the Israelites. It's another transference. Just like Christian identity does with the Edomites and the
right.
All these other things. It's always trying to get away from the idea that the Israelites have any blame. When you read the Old Testament, how can anybody support how they acted, their behavior, how they treated other groups? I mean, you have all these examples of their modus operandi and what they did going into different cultures and getting them to be divided and fight amongst each other and, plunder and pillage their wealth. Everything that's going on today is right there in that Bible. So, I mean, it's there's no question.
Yes, basically, American Christianity is pro-Jewish. Whether you like it or not, that's the case. And we have to deal with that, and which is one of the reasons that I personally turned away from the Christian religion and don't see that it's appropriate for Aryan people. Again, that is going to create a lot of people disagreeing with me, but that's fine.
Right.
That's how I feel. Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Well, I mean, we have to really come at this from a place of truth, and it's hard to maintain, a stance on this and just, wow, holy geez, we got like 4 or 5 callers, so I'm gonna start bringing them up. I guess we really sparked a fire here, so we're gonna bring them up. Is that okay with you?
Sounds great.
All right.
Let's see what they have to say.
Hello, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name's James. I'm calling from Houston. How you going?
Pretty good. What did you have to contribute to the conversation?
I just wanted to call up and say that I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that Jews do cop a bit of flack in this modern day and age. There's a lot of negative connotations regarding them a lot. And I think the best way to deal with it would probably be to just, if you just had one massive statewide barbecue and cooked all the Jews alive, then I think that would probably be a better way to deal with it, and this world would be a lot better.
Well, the bottom line is what I say is that it's a serious issue. I take it seriously, and we don't speak like that. But the bottom line is they have to be taken out of power. They can't be allowed to maintain a power base over our people, and that's what needs to be done. We've got a bunch of other callers, sir. Do you want to just hold on, or do you want to? Did you have anything else to say?
Yeah, Hitler did nothing wrong, and if we could get another Holocaust happening, that would be fantastic.
All right. I don't know if this person is serious or if this person is just trying to kind of make fun of what we're doing here. But the bottom line is we're talking about Christianity and we're trying to just stay on topic here. We have a Derek here. I don't know where you're calling from, sir. What did you want to add to the conversation?
Get this through your head, you Jew motherfucker, you. You only exist out here because of me. I'm what counts out here, not your fucking country clubs or your fucking TV shows.
All right.
What?
Wow, we've got a lot of rowdy people out here. Let's see if we can get someone that actually wants to say something of intelligence. Okay, people are really riled up, I guess. I'm just trying to bring these people out.
I told you. I think we've riled people up. Absolutely.
Here's a 303 number, sir. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's Reed from Colorado.
How's it going, Reed?
How you doing, Dana?
Pretty good, man.
Yeah, I was just listening to your show. It's good. Basically on Christianity, on awakening a white racial consciousness. I will, I will admit, if you look at ancient history in the Bible, you got these CI people saying, our forefathers that were put down in that book were Aryans. Now, I will admit to a certain extent that may be true. Some of the myths and the legends that, the white man has written are evident in the Bible. But the Bible as it stands has been appropriated by the Jew, which is what he does because he's a parasite. He may have taken some of these legends, mythological stories of the white man and converted them, perverted them, whatever you want to say, into a Jewish way of thinking. So at that point, where we stand today, the Bible is just not, the Bible as it stands is just an amalgamation of Jewish and Aryan thought, which means it's garbage and it needs to be thrown out.
See, I take the view that the Bible is completely Jewish. Because it's written, as Harold said, it's written by them for them. Of course, if you look at the Old Testament, there are stories in there that they may have taken or stolen from other peoples. There's no doubt about it. The flood story completely comes from the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, and I mention that a lot because it's a pretty obvious example. Again, it's their narrative, it's their story, and they're the heroes of their own story. So why would we want to take that as our faith? And that's my bottom line, and I agree with you 100%, man. It's I'm not a truther that's trying to say, look, religion is just used to control people. Yeah, we all know that. That's kind of obvious to most, but there is a yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, let's just get down to the fucking brass tacks. I mean, there seems to be a split right now as far as the movement, whatever you want to call it, is going forth. There's a small contingent of, CI, whatever you want to call it. And what I'm trying to say is that, okay, fine. Listen, all you CI people. The Bible may have elements of Aryan, esotericism in it. It may have that. But it was created on Earth, and I'm losing my track. I will admit that it may have Aryan origins in it, but the Jew has co-opted it to such an extent that the Bible, taken as a whole, it can't be used. It's contrary to the white man's endeavors. I mean, we keep saying we need to work with these people. But there's such a small minority. I mean, how many CIs are there?
Yeah.
12? Like, you can count on your fucking toes and fingers.
I think.
We don't need them. I'm sick of all these people sucking up to these CI people. I mean, I will give a shout out to Mike Delaney for creating 9/11 Missing Link, which truly woke me up to the Jewish problem. Which is what, in 2008, and after that I went on a and, started investigating things, of that nature. But, I mean, Christianity will fall by the wayside on its own, by the natural course of nature. I mean, it's not going to last. I mean, the white man's future is not Christianity. I mean,
absolutely. Hallelujah, Reed. You couldn't have. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I think Harold agrees with that.
I like that you say that, but I wonder if that's really happening fast enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take a little more time, that's for sure. But CI is. I mean, there could be thousands of them. There could be tens of thousands. I don't even know.
They're the blacks. They're the black Negroes on the corner of sitting in Brooklyn. Talking about how the black men. You got white men standing up talking about they're the true Jews. You got fucking niggers doing the same shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got these black Hebrews, and they say, well, we're the real Israelites. We're the real ones. So how does that make the CI guys feel? I mean, it's just, it's hilarious. All right, we got a couple other callers. I'm going to bring this person up. He's been waiting. Sir, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hello?
Hello.
Hey, man, my name's Jim, and I'm from Ohio.
How's it going?
It's going pretty great. How about you?
All right. What'd you have to say?
I'm in a similar political stance as you, and I was wondering what events happened in your life that made you come to your conclusion?
Well, I was kind of raised. I mean, I had a good mentor that taught me this, and I also saw a lot of it with my own eyes. I could see the. I mean, once you wake up to the Jewish domination of the media, and you see where they're hurting us, it becomes painfully obvious that we have a big problem here, and I'm getting some kind of a feedback problem here. I don't know what the issue is, but it's just a matter of opening your eyes, and you can't deny the truth when you see it. I mean,
but since you're on the radio, how do you open one's eyes to see such a large idea?
Well, you have to just, if you're a racialist and you're approaching things from a racial perspective, what is the biggest problem? What is, other than our own deficiencies and lack of identity we have? If you look at the main thing I would point to is The Culture of Critique by Dr. Kevin MacDonald, and he shows how all these movements have been created by Jews for the purpose of gaining a supremacy over us, which they have, and driving us into extinction, essentially. So that's and you can see it on TV with all the promotion of intermixture and miscegenation and all this stuff. It all ties together to the same culprit.
Okay, can you give me just 1 second? I'm trying to fix that feedback issue that you're having.
Okay, I'm gonna bring somebody else up here. We have another caller.
All right, I'll be on the line. All right.
Sure.
Good
Hello,
evening.
what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Marcos, and I'm calling from New Jersey.
Okay, what did you have to say, Marcos?
I wanted to speak about expand what you guys were talking about, but I want to speak from it from a Shrexist view. Are you familiar with a Shrexist view?
No, what does that mean?
Well, when you look at things from like a Shrexist is like a new religion that's up and coming. Not many people know about it, but being a Shrexist, I'm very into onions and stuff because a Shrexist is all about love and it's all about life. So when we talk about these kinds of things, we want to look at it from a Shrek point of view. If you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, sir. You know what? I got to be honest. I'm having a feedback problem, and I don't see where this is really going. So I'm going to try and fix this. Let's see. Harold, I just want to bring it back to you because we have 30 minutes or so left. And, some of these callers seem to be just kind of, I don't know if they were really taking this seriously, but we had a crazy amount. When I looked at the board, I couldn't believe just one after another. But this person is asking me, how did we come to this? Harold, what would you say? How did you wake up to this kind of thing? I mean,
I'm unmuted now.
Well, when I was a young man,
I'm asking Harold here to answer your question from his perspective.
Oh, my bad. All right.
Yeah, when I was a young man, I learned about a man called George Lincoln Rockwell, and we probably all know who he is. And I became interested in that. I moved away from that during my university years, but as an adult, I came back to look at what really happened, looking at what really happened in the Second World War, and that basically you end up seeing that America and England became the tools of the Jewish conspiracy. Roosevelt, Stalin, Churchill, they all worked together. They were a troika of traitors to the Western way of life. Once you realize that, you see that what was going on in Germany was the right thing, and that National Socialism had a way. It amazed people back in the day that it was able to accomplish the things that it have. When you look at pictures of Adolf Hitler back in the day, he rode around in almost with no bodyguards at all. Apparently never worried about that anyone among his people would actually try to hurt him in any way. They never did. And when you look at what's going on today, you see it's totally a different situation.
Well, I actually read something. Said Hitler had roughly like 200 assassination attempts.
Yes. I don't know about 200, but
it was high numbers, 100 and something, high hundreds.
Yeah, but that was not from his own people. I mean, that was from his, anybody going after him. I mean, he was, I don't think any leader in history had an approval rating that he did. If you look at, so. It's just, I mean, this is the issue. I mean, we're living in America today, and you have this background of our country, and there's just this huge disconnect because, it's kind of hard to start a white nationalist movement when so many people are coming from it, from the completely wrong direction. And that's why I use words like patriotard, because we're all caught up on this Constitution and just all this kind of stuff, and it's irrelevant today. I mean, it's we have a situation where it's all been turned against us, and we literally have to start from scratch. I mean, that's kind of how I see it. All right, we got one more caller here. I'm going to bring them up. See what they.
Hey, may I say one more thing before?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. Well, the similar political stance that I have towards yours is pretty much against all the hate fags like you that are completely against everybody when you have no fucking idea what you're talking about because you have over 9,000.
All right, we're getting rid of this guy. Okay, 571, sir. Where are you calling from, and what's your name?
Yeah, hi Dana. This is Ahmed.
Oh, how you doing, sir?
Hey, how you doing?
Would you have to contribute to the conversation?
Yeah, I just wanted to. I had a couple of comments and maybe like a hypothetical question.
Sure, go
ahead. About the role of Christianity in basically Europe throughout the ages. If you were to maybe see what Europe would have been without Christianity, do you think it might have just diverged into just totally different groups of peoples, because in some sense, I do see Europe, Christianity having being at the center of a lot of wars and stuff like that, and you could argue that maybe those wars would have happened anyways, but from a perspective of creating some sort of a unified ideology, not really ideology, but just like a unified sense of a common belief system, which translated into coagulation of, like, say, the amalgamation of all the cultures, which maybe might have even created like a sense of a European identity, or even like So my question is, do you think that there might have even been a kind of a white nationalism without that period that Christianity gelled Europe together? That's one thing. Another thing. Go ahead.
Yep. Well, I mean, this is what the proponents of Christianity would argue, is that without it, Europe would never have been Europe. And I don't believe that, because Europe inherited the Roman Empire. And, we had the Roman Empire and we had the Greek civilization before that. And you had all the Germanic tribes and Celtic tribes and other whoever built Stonehenge, they weren't Christians. So I mean, there was some kind of civilization there in prehistory, and had it not come, I don't know. It's just hard to say, because it's just such a huge hypothetical, and it's hard to tell what would have happened. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of today. And does it actually help us as a race, or does it hurt us? And my conclusion is that we're at the point where it's the only relevance is that it does have is a negative one as an influence. I don't know. Sure. I mean, would we have been able to repel the Mongols and the Islamic invaders and this kind of thing, the Turks and this, I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, it happened, and for 2,000 years it's been the faith. But it's just in looking at it as a actual theology, it seems to be detrimental to racial survival. That's what I would answer.
I believe
that
it is very, very detrimental. And we don't, because the Romans brought in Christianity and imposed it on Europe, the pagan civilizations never really had a chance to evolve. We don't really know what would have happened from that, but you might think it would have been a very, very, very good thing.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
It would have been a very positive development, yes.
But in the sense of individual cultures, yeah, perhaps. But I'm talking about like a unified view of Europe. Would it, the Romans they did impose their will on Europe, but they would have done that anyways. But in terms of after the Romans fell, now there was some sort of a camaraderie between Christians who were in, say Germany or Italy or different things, and they had a common, they kind of had a common language because Latin was the basically there was a point at which the only educated people were were the priest class, and then they transferred knowledge. I mean, if you look at even mathematically or
yeah, well, I that's the part of Christian history. That's the part of the history that is positive. You look at but on the other hand, you could say, well, but look at the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Look at all the knowledge that was lost, and for a long period of time, the Dark Ages were a period where things were suppressed, and I don't look at that as the Renaissance was a rebirth in classical knowledge and looking toward the pagan past. So that's kind of why I think it led to this rebirth of European civilization. But what was your other comment?
Yeah, I guess I would just make the comment that I don't think it's accurate to say that all Abrahamic faiths support Jewish supremacism. Certainly, Islam doesn't, and Christianity, at its core, I don't think did, because if Jesus only came to uphold the Old Testament, well, why did he even come? That in a way that's kind of contradictory. If Jesus were to, Jesus came and he had some serious gripes with people, so it's not like he was saying, well, I'm really an Old Testament guy, and there's a lot of issues with the accurateness of the original doctrines, but I would say I don't think it's accurate to say that at least Islam supports Jewish supremacism. It absolutely doesn't.
We're arguing that the basis of it, the foundation of it, was Jewish, in that it's a building off of a Jewish platform, or the Judaic.
I suppose, but it's not. It doesn't use any Judaic text or anything like that. There's no. And the thing is, if you say you're building on one thing or another, well, either those things happened or they didn't happen. And if it didn't happen, yes, you could say it's a plagiarism. But if it was like you saw a shooting star, right, and that's an actual observable incident, something that happened. If someone were to come 30 years later, if someone were to write a book that day that they saw a shooting star and say, on this day the shooting star occurred, and then 30 years later someone were to say, on 30 years ago there was a shooting star, that's not plagiarism. Plagiarism is basically when you copy fiction. But if you
the thing is, are we going to really believe, if we're not going to believe that Moses parted the river?
Absolutely.
And if we're not going to believe that Jonah survived being swallowed by a whale, then to say that Jesus or Muhammad ascended into heaven, it's just another
right,
myth. I mean, to say one didn't happen and the other did, to me, it's just kind of like a cognitive dissonance. But all right, Ahmed, I want to see if this caller had anything else to say. Thanks for calling. We'll be in touch.
All right, thanks.
Okay, sir, whoever's left here, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Because you got Harold on the line here with you.
I think that guy went away on us.
No, it says he's still here. He might just be listening. So I guess we'll just move. We're talking to you. Did you were you the one that asked about how we came to the realization of what we're talking about here?
What are we talking about?
Oh, is this Reed?
Yeah.
Oh, hey Reed. Okay. You're the only guy left in the room.
Yeah.
I got rid of all the other callers because it was just getting to be too much. But okay, you can stay on. I just it's difficult, but I agree with you. I mean, when it comes to CI, and Yahweh this, Yahweh that, and just my problem is that
hey, man,
you have people reading
nice.
the Old Testament. Yeah.
You're too nice.
Yeah.
Fuck CI, man. I'm serious. Honestly, what are these guys trying to say with their read the Old Testament. I love Frank. I wish Frank was listening. Frank should call in right now.
Yeah, I know.
Frank, I love that guy.
I know, me too. It's if your head is going to be immersed in the Torah, and you're justifying it by saying that these ancient tribes were actually the founders of European civilization, which on its head is just ridiculous. Anybody who studied history knows that European history was going on, both simultaneously and far into the distant past, long before any of these, mythologies were even written. So to say that these guys actually went and, the tribe of Dan went and founded Denmark, or Ireland, or something like this, or Scotland, or the Danes come from the tribe of Dan. They're just taking words. It's to me like Christian identity is all about taking words and seeing if a Hebrew word looks similar to a European word, and then trying to make a connection. That seems to be and that's about as logical of a fallacy as you could have.
Well, as I said earlier in the show, you really can't find any reputable historian, European or otherwise, who has ever thought that the people of Israel were the ones who migrated into Europe and are the real Aryans. There is absolutely no proof of that, other than a few names that sound this and that alike. Denmark and Dan is a good example, but it really doesn't prove anything at all.
And then to have your whole belief system based on that, Lou made a really good point, because he said that when we're going to try to indoctrinate or bring more white racialists into the movement, this could be a very, they're going to look at this and say, you guys are crazy. You're a bunch of nutbags. So I see it as a more counterproductive thing in attempts to get regular whites to try to, start thinking racially and fighting for their own interests. But they're going to do their thing, and it's just I guess it's just a matter of they do their thing and we do ours. And as you said, Reed, there's not really a whole lot of them. It's I think it's a tiny little number. But on Facebook, I find every other I'm getting a lot of people that are just they're stuck in Christianity, and it's a very easy way for them to justify racialism.
Hey, Dana.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about the dialectic.
Okay, wait. Let's have Hero just save that point, Reed. Hero, you go, and then you go, Reed.
Yeah, it's a way of holding on to the old Christian beliefs and holding on to the Judeo-Christian Bible. And, they're all over Facebook, and they're very outspoken. But again, I know that I'm pissing people off, but I see it basically as a false religion. Christianity is a false religion, hence so-called Christian identity, which is not a really very good name for it anyway, is also a false belief. There is no reputable non-Christian historian or Christian historian that's ever proposed the idea that the European people are descended from Semitic Abrahamic people that came up from Palestine. There is no proof of this at all. I know that others will vehemently disagree with us.
If anything, it's the opposite. There's evidence that there were Aryan tribes that moved into the Middle East during these migrational periods. And you had groups like the Hittites, the Hurrians, the Kassites, the Mitanni. These were all Aryan-speaking tribes in the Middle East that contributed to the gene pool over there. Not the other way around, not Israelites going into Europe and starting all these nations, and it's just a very cartoonish way to look at history, and it's not real. There's no archaeology or philology behind it that backs it. So like you say, it's a false religion, and it's a tangent or a heresy of a heresy. It's basically coming out of British Israelitism or British Israelism.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would call it. Do you know anything about the background of Christian identity and how it actually came about? Because Tom Metzger said it originally they believed that the Jews were their cousins, and then they changed it. You can go into that if you want.
Well, yeah, British Israelitism is essentially the basis of all of this. But again, when you look at that and read about that, you don't find any reputable historians that have ever really proposed that belief. And it is a false religion. And
there's no other way to say it. It's just.
And you are so very, very correct, Dana, about that other Aryan groups were in the Mideast and contributed to the gene pool there rather than the opposite of that.
Correct. And that's my problem is, people just seem to be, they believe what they want to believe, and they just kind of make up their own justification for it. And, these guys are just so funny about how they do this. They'll say, it's just another, well, you're interpreting it that way. You're not interpreting it our way, and it's, well, you can say that about anything. Anybody could go and Reed's point about, I don't know if Reed said it or the other guy, but the blacks are saying the same thing. And if anything, you look at the Phoenicia Jews from Ethiopia, and you look at Solomon's mines, supposedly were over there in Ethiopia or Somalia, or there's an argument to be made that maybe the original Israelites weren't from the Middle East. Maybe they weren't Semites. Maybe that's why they're so antagonistic to the other people or never got along with them. Maybe they were from Africa or something. Who knows? The bottom line is, who cares? Why do we have to bother digging into this and trying? It's all to revive that book and to keep it as part of our to keep it linked to the white race, and the white race would be just so much better off to completely shrug it off. That's where I stand.
I agree completely with you. Yes, that I write about the Phoenicia Jews in my book published by BarnesReview.org, and a number of black groups claim to be the real Jews. And it's interesting, the Phoenicia Jews of Ethiopia, they do speak a Semitic dialect, apparently, from what I found when I studied that.
They're Semitic.
And when they, some of them have settled in Israel, and they're totally discriminated against by the Ashkenazi Jews that run Israel. Several years ago, they had a blood drive where people give blood, like they do over here. And it turned out that when the facts were revealed, that when the black Phoenicia Jews donated blood, the Israelis dumped it away. They didn't want it. They were very, very, very racist in their own way about all of that.
Come on.
Yeah, and I find it funny. That in Israel today, they not this day, but within the last month or so, they crowned Miss Israel. They gave a Phoenicia the title of Miss Israel. One of these black Jews from.
Yes.
Yeah, and I find that to be just a big public relations stunt. because,
I think that's
as
all
you
it
say,
was. Yeah.
you know, they do discriminate, and they're very racist against, you know, their fellow Jews, you know, and you know, it's just kind of funny to see this play out. And also what came out in the news was that they had been actually giving them some sterilization pill too. They were like sterilizing them as well, is, you know, and discriminating, deporting them. So of course you have, you know, the Jews don't want the Europeans to have any kind of control over their borders. We can't be, because that would be racist, you know. It would be evil for Europeans to try to salvage their societies and their homogenous nations. But if the Jews do it, it's okay, you know. And that's the hypocritical nature of all that they do. And that's, I think, why people are really waking up to it. They're figuring out what they really are. And again, I call them a cult. I mean, I really, you know, this is another huge debate, and we're running out of time, but when I look at the Jews and I look at all the different segments of the population, like, you know, you have Sephardic, you have Ashkenazi, you have, you know, what's the other one? The Mizrahi are the Arabic or Middle Eastern Jews, and then you have like the Russian or Chabad Lubavitch, you know, all these different groups, and they don't, you know, these Jews really, to say that there's a common link or a strain that they all share, I think is dubious. I mean, maybe Ashkenazi Jews are genetically related and have some kind of common core, but the only way to really look at them is a cult and a parasite. I mean, that's because what they do is they intermarry with Europeans, and then they convert that child to the faith. And now that person, I mean, if you look at a lot of Jews today, they look just as white as the next guy. So this is why it's such a big problem, because they can easily call themselves white if they want, because they have this white skin from all this intermixing. And, you know, on the other hand, they're a completely alien and separate group that acts contrary to our interests and is hostile to us. And they're in control, unfortunately. But, yeah, guys, we only have a few minutes left. I guess I'm going to just close it out because I got to get ready for work. But I think it was a good show. We touched on the general issue of Christianity and, you know, where it came from and what it is. And, again, you know, it's a matter of not holding on to the past and looking towards the future. If Reed and Hero, if you guys have any closing remarks, I'd like to get those now, because I'm gonna close up shop soon.
Yeah, I would just like to say, Dana, that you hear me?
Yep.
There's just a basic difference between the way people think. If you're a white man, you think in a certain way. You think of creativity and construction. If you think of a Jew, he atomizes everything. He wants to divide. He's the divisor. You understand?
Yeah, he wants to deconstruct and break it down, and, you know, it's chaos. I mean, it's you know, they're I mean, I don't want to go further into it. I mean, I worry about, you know, our own people. We have to just keep the focus on our own people.
What you have to understand, Dana, is that I know you've sort of put your feelings out there as far as an agnostic, not knowing, but there's a higher force out there. There's knowledge on a higher plane that interferes with the physical realities of the earth. The Jews are our number one enemy, but they are manipulated by a higher force, as are our people, who are manipulated by a higher force, which is a good force as opposed to an evil force. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take all actions to propagate and push forward our movement. But at the same time, you have to remember that the Jew is doing the same thing on his end.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, just keep the hope up and keep fighting.
All right,
yes,
thanks a lot, Reed.
The Jews are certainly doing the same thing on their end, and they have interbred all over the world with us, and they have used this very much to manipulate the white race.
All right, I think that about says it. I mean, it's a matter of it's not. We're not saying Hero Rome is deeply spiritual, deeply, and I am myself. We're all looking for wisdom, knowledge. Gnosticism is another whole topic that we could have gotten into, because the interesting thing about Gnosticism is when Christianity was being constructed as a faith, there were competing versions of it, and you had in Gnostic faith or principles, the Old Testament God Yahweh was actually the devil. They basically said Yahweh was Satan, and Satan is or Lucifer was the good guy. Because so it had an anti-Jewish feel to it, and you had of course the movement of the Essenes, I guess, were somewhat influenced by Gnosticism, but I don't know how much. I mean, it gets complicated. I just figured I'd throw that last thing out there because Gnosticism is another point of interest, and of course, you got the name of your website is Gnostic Liberation Front, so I figured I'd pull that up.
The Gnostics are a very interesting topic, and essentially, they were the early Christian church. If you want my opinion about it, that they essentially were the early Christian church. And the Romans did away with all that. They destroyed all the Gnostic manuscripts. Right after the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1946, the Nag Hammadi Gnostic Gospels were found. They've all, N-A-G, one word, H-A-M-A-D-I, Google that. They're all translated, and if you read any of them, you'll see it has very, very little to do with what we think of as Christianity today.
Yeah, they had the division between the material world and the spiritual world, and you have I was interested in them because of the Cathars and the Grail legends and all that, the Albigensian Crusade. And that ties into all this kind of Dan Brown kind of stuff. But it's just it's an interesting topic, and the bottom line is we like to delve into this here and there. I tried to show some examples of why Christianity is not beneficial today for us. Of course, there is another side to it, or there's going to be people that are going to disagree with that, and that's fine. I mean, we're all on the same team, hopefully. But we're not going to be silent. We're not going to not speak our minds on these issues. So, and that's another reason I came to Renegade, because I know that they are open to these type of views. But yeah, go ahead.
What we've discussed on the air tonight will make some people explore around and discover some things on their own. That's really what it's all about. And I hope that at least, I'm sure that some who have listened to us will do that and bless them in their efforts.
All right. Okay, guys, I'm going to close out the show. I think it went well, and Reed just dropped off, so we're going to just, I'm going to play a song and take us out. We have here... let's see. I'm gonna just pick something. Here's a pretty heavy song by a band called Nevermore. They have a track called Poison God Machine, and that kind of relates to what we were talking about. It's really about the media, and if you listen to the lyrics, I think you'll enjoy it. So I'm gonna play that, and then we're gonna sign off, and that's it. So here, I guess I'll thank you for coming. I know you do other shows. I've heard you on The White Voice with Joe. Like I said, Keith Johnson had you on Revolt of the Plebs, and I've heard you some other places. And, I'd like to invite you back sometime when you're not busy, if you want to ever get your...
I appreciate it greatly. I enjoyed the show. Like I say, I think that we have put a lot of ideas out there that hopefully that people will begin thinking about. So that is
all right.
Good. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks a lot, Harold. Take care. Okay, and I'm going to play the song, and then we'll take it out. All right, folks, I'm taking off. Please make sure to catch all the shows here at Renegade Broadcasting, and you all have a good night. Take care.